2 empty chairs. That's what I saw when the dean called my name. Dr. Emma Thorne, summa cum laude. The applause in the auditorium was deafening. Thousands of people cheering for their children, their spouses. But in the front row, seats A4 and A5 sat perfectly still. No parents, no flowers, just the cold metal glint of the folding chairs under the stage lights. They weren't stuck in traffic. They weren't sick. They were 3 hours away, popping pink confetti cannons for my sister, Lexi's gender reveal party, the golden child, the one who dropped out of college twice, but somehow always needed a new car, a new apartment, a new bailout. I walked across that stage, shook the dean's hand, and smiled, but it wasn't a smile of joy. It was the smile of a woman who had finally stopped caring. I walked off stage, clutching the diploma I had bled for over the last 6 years. I pulled my phone out of my gown pocket, expecting maybe, just maybe, a text. Sorry we missed it. Proud of you. We'll make it up to you. Nothing. Actually, that's not true. There was a notification, but it wasn't from my mother. It was from Chase Bank. High-value transaction alert. $52,000 wired to Lexi's Forever Home, LLC. Account ending in 8890 is now overdrawn. I stared at the screen. The noise of the graduation faded into a dull buzz. My hands didn't shake. My breathing didn't hitch. I just felt a cold, metallic calm wash over me. They didn't just skip my graduation. They waited until I was on stage, distracted, unreachable, to liquidate the savings account I had entrusted them with when I was 18. Most people would cry. Most people would call them screaming. But I didn't do either. You see, my parents forgot one small detail. I didn't just get a degree in business. I hold a PhD in forensic accounting. My entire career is built on tracking hidden assets and destroying white-collar criminals. They thought they were just stealing from their daughter. They didn't realize they had just robbed the most dangerous woman they know. And the best part? They have no idea I'm coming for them. You need to understand something about the Thorne family dynamic. It wasn't a family. It was a parasitic host relationship. And I was the host. For as long as I can remember, I was the retirement plan, the safety net, the fixer. While Lexi was busy crashing 3 different cars before her 21st birthday, all paid for by Daddy, using money I had sent home for groceries, I was working double shifts at a data entry firm just to keep my tuition payments current. Family helps family, Emma, my mother would say, usually right after asking me to transfer a few $100s because the electric bill was unexpectedly high. It wasn't high. They were just diverting their own income to fund Lexi's lifestyle. For modeling classes that went nowhere, her influencer phase that cost $5,000 in camera equipment and netted 0 followers, her 3 failed engagements, each ring bigger than the last, funded by credit cards they begged me to pay off to save the family name. I did it. I paid. I kept my mouth shut. I thought I was buying love. I thought if I just solved enough problems, eventually they would look at me with the same adoration they poured onto Lexi. What a pathetic joke. I drove back to my apartment that afternoon, the diploma tossing on the passenger seat like trash. I didn't go to a celebratory dinner. I didn't pop champagne. I went into my home office, locked the door, and turned on my server. They thought I wouldn't notice the $52,000 until Monday. They thought I'd be too drunk on graduation punch to check my balances. They banked on me being the submissive, quiet daughter I'd always been. But they forgot what I do for a living. I sat down at my triple monitor setup and cracked my knuckles. I didn't just log into my bank account. I ran a full-spectrum forensic audit on myself. I pulled credit reports from all 3 bureaus. I cross-referenced Social Security usage. I accessed the joint accounts my parents had guilted me into keeping open for emergencies. What I found made the $52,000 theft look like petty cash. The screen filled with red flags. It wasn't just my savings. There was a home equity line of credit HELOC opened in my name 6 months ago. Signature forged. Not even a good forgery. It looked like Lexi had signed it with her left hand. There were 3 credit cards maxed out at limits I didn't even know I had, all showing transactions in my hometown. Baby Bliss Boutique, Luxury Strollers Inc., The Ritz Catering. They hadn't just stolen my money for a down payment on a house for Lexi. They were funding her entire existence, her entire pregnancy, and this grandiose gender reveal party using my credit score. They were drowning me in debt before I had even started my postdoctoral life. I clicked on the transaction details for the $52,000 wire transfer. The beneficiary was Lexi's Forever Home LLC. The address listed was a sprawling 4-bedroom property in the upscale part of town. A house my parents couldn't afford in a million years. They were buying her a mansion with my money, on my credit. And they skipped the ceremony where I earned the credentials to catch them doing it. I leaned back in my chair, the blue light of the monitors reflecting in my eyes. I felt a pulse in my jaw, a rhythmic thudding of pure unadulterated rage. But I didn't smash the keyboard. I didn't scream. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out a fresh legal pad. At the top, I wrote one word in bold, black ink: evidence. Then I started printing bank statements, IP logs showing the logins came from my father's iPad, the forged loan documents, the wire transfer receipts. Most people would call a lawyer to settle this civilly. They'd want to talk it out. I wasn't interested in talking. I wasn't interested in getting the money back. I looked at the smiling photo of my family on my desk, the one from Christmas where I was holding the camera so they could all be in the frame. I picked it up and dropped it into the trash can. I didn't want a settlement. I wanted an incarceration. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't eat. I existed purely on caffeine and the cold, hard dopamine hit of finding incriminating data. Forensic accounting isn't just about math, it's about psychology. You have to understand why people hide money to figure out where they hid it. My parents weren't sophisticated criminals. They were greedy narcissists. And narcissists always leave a trail because they believe they're too smart to get caught. By 3 a.m., I had mapped out the entire architecture of their fraud. It was worse than I thought. The $52,000 wire transfer was just the tip of the iceberg. I dug into the history of Lexi's Forever Home LLC. It wasn't just a shell company for the house. It was a laundering vehicle. I found a series of transfers dating back 3 years. Small amounts, $2,000 here, $4,000 there, all pulled from a custodial account my grandmother had left for me, an account I thought had been closed years ago. They hadn't closed it. They had forged my signature to keep it active, drained it dry, and funneled the cash into this LLC to pay for Lexi's lifestyle. Her study abroad trip to Italy? Stolen inheritance. Her brand new Audi? My money. But then I found the smoking gun. The one that would turn this from a family dispute into a federal indictment. I accessed my father's cloud storage. He's the kind of man who uses password 123 and never logs out. In a folder labeled House Stuff, I found a scanned PDF of a deed transfer draft. They were planning to close on the mansion in 2 days. The plan was explicit. The mortgage was in my name, using the identity theft they'd committed, but the title of the house was going to be placed in an irrevocable trust with Lexi as the sole beneficiary. It was a straw man purchase. They were using my credit to buy the asset, then immediately shielding the asset so I couldn't seize it when I inevitably found out. It was malicious. It was calculated. It was designed to leave me with $1 million in debt and them with $1 million asset. And then I saw the emails. My mother to my father, dated 2 weeks ago. Don't worry about Emma. She's too busy with her little dissertation to check her credit. By the time she notices, the house will be in the trust and she can't touch it. She'll just have to pay it off. It's the least she can do after we raised her. I stared at the screen. Little dissertation. The least she can do. The rage that had been simmering in my gut turned into ice. They didn't view me as a daughter. They viewed me as livestock, an animal to be slaughtered to feed their golden child. I picked up my phone. It was 4:30 a.m. on a Sunday, but I knew who to call. 6 months ago, I had consulted on a case for the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. The lead agent, a guy named Miller, owed me a favor. I had helped him nail a Ponzi scheme operator who was hiding assets in crypto. I dialed his personal number. He picked up on the third ring, voice groggy. "Thorne? It's 4 in the morning. You better be dying. I have a case for you, Miller." I said, my voice steady. "Wire fraud, identity theft, bank fraud, and structuring. I have the IP logs, the bank statements, and the confession in writing." "Who's the target?" he asked, the sleep leaving his voice. I looked at the photo of my parents on my screen. My mother's fake smile, my father's arrogant smirk. "The targets are Richard and Diane Thorne," I said. "And I need you to move fast. They're closing on a property using stolen funds in 48 hours. Miller paused. "Thorne, isn't that your last name?" "Yes," I said. "They're my parents, and I want to be the one to open the door when you raid them." There was a silence on the line. Then Miller spoke, his voice dropping an octave. "Send me the files. If this checks out, we can get a warrant by Tuesday." "Tuesday is too late," I replied. "The closing is Tuesday morning." "But the gender reveal party is this afternoon. All the suspects will be in one place." "And Miller?" "Yeah, I want lights and sirens." I needed them comfortable. A criminal who feels safe is a criminal who makes mistakes. If they sensed even a tremor of suspicion from me, they might shred documents, hide hard drives, or transfer the funds to an offshore account I couldn't touch. So, I did the hardest thing I've ever done. I played the good daughter one last time. At 8 a.m., I sent a text to my mother. "Hey, Mom. Graduation ran long and my phone died. Sorry I missed you guys. I'm driving down to surprise Lexi. I have a contribution for the new baby fund. See you soon." I stared at the phone, waiting. The word contribution was the bait. It was the only language they spoke. The 3 dots appeared instantly. "That's sweet, honey. We're so proud of you. We're at the new house. It's a surprise for Lexi, so act surprised. 12 Oak Drive. Drive safe." I almost laughed. "We're so proud of you." They weren't proud of me. They were proud that their cash cow was coming to the slaughterhouse voluntarily. They assumed I was coming to cut a check, not to cut their throats. I showered and put on my best suit, the charcoal gray one I wore for my thesis defense. I want to look professional. I wanted to look like the authority figure I was about to become. Before I left, I stopped by a 24-hour print shop. I didn't print a card. I printed the gift. I compiled the highlight reel of my investigation, the forged HELOC application, the wire transfer receipts, the emails mocking me, and the fraudulent deed transfer. I bound it all in a sleek black leather presentation folder. It looked like a business proposal. In a way, it was. I was proposing they go to prison. I wrapped the folder in shimmering silver paper and tied it with a massive blue bow. It looked innocent. It looked expensive. I got in my car and began the 3-hour drive. Miller called me halfway there. "We have the warrant," he said. His voice was tight. "The judge signed off, based on the identity theft and the imminent flight risk of the funds. We're coordinating with local PD. We'll be at the address at 1400 hours. The gender reveal is at 1430, I said, checking my watch. That gives me 30 minutes inside. "Emma, do not engage," Miller warned. "If you tip them off, they could flush the data. Just identify the targets and wait for us." "I won't tip them off, Miller," I lied. "I'm just there to celebrate family." I hung up. I pulled up to 12 Oak Drive at 1:45 p.m. The house was obscene. A sprawling McMansion with white pillars and a fountain in the driveway. There were pink and blue balloons arching over the front door. A caterer's van was unloading trays of shrimp. A drone was buzzing overhead, capturing footage for Lexi's Instagram. My parents' Mercedes was parked right in front. Lexi's new Audi was next to it. My beat-up Honda Civic looked like a stain on their perfect canvas as I pulled in behind them. I stepped out of the car, adjusting my blazer. I grabbed the silver gift box from the passenger seat. The front door opened before I even knocked. My mother stood there, holding a glass of champagne. She looked younger than her years thanks to the Botox I had unknowingly paid for. "Emma," she shrieked, rushing forward to hug me. She smelled of expensive perfume and deceit. You made it. And look at you. You look gorgeous. She didn't ask about the ceremony. She didn't ask about my PhD. Her eyes went immediately to the silver box in my hand. Is that for the baby? She cooed, touching the bow. It's for the whole family. I said, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. It's something I've been working on for a long time. Well, come in, come in. She ushered me into the foyer. Lexi is dying to show you the nursery. We have so much to tell you. I stepped across the threshold, the lioness walking into the den. But this time, the lioness had brought the hunters with her. Inside, the house was buzzing with guests. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years. They all waved, smiling, oblivious to the fact that they were standing in a crime scene. I gripped the silver box tighter. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for the snap. The party was a masterclass in narcissism. The living room was a sea of pastel balloons and expensive floral arrangements. A string quartet's playing pop covers in the corner. The caterers were passing around Wagyu beef sliders. I did the math in my head as I walked through the room. The flowers, $2,000. The catering, $5,000. The string quartet, $800 an hour. My money, all of it. Emma, Lexi squealed from across the room. She was sitting on a velvet throne, literally, a rented throne, wearing a white dress that probably cost more than my first car. She didn't stand up. She waved me over like I was one of the waitstaff. I approached the throne, the silver box heavy in my hand. Hey, sis, I said. Congrats on the house. It's impressive, isn't it? She beamed, rubbing her bitty bump. Mom and Dad really outdid themselves. They said it's my push present. Can you believe it? No mortgage, fully paid off. I tightened my grip on the box, fully paid off. That's amazing. So, she said, eyeing the silver package, is that the check? Mom said you were bringing a contribution. We really need it for the nursery furniture. I saw this crib from Italy and it's like $6,000, but it's essential. It's not a check, I said softly. It's something better. It's the truth. She frowned, confused. The truth? Is that a brand? Before she could ask more, my father clapped a heavy hand on my shoulder. He smelled of scotch and arrogance. Glad you came to your senses, sweetheart, he whispered, leaning in close so the guests wouldn't hear. We need to have a little chat later. There's some paperwork for the house I need you to sign. Just a formality. Since your credit is so good, we put you on the deed as a silent partner. Silent partner, I repeated. Is that what I am? Don't start, he warned, his grip tightening. Just sign the papers, smile for the pictures, and don't ruin your sister's day. You owe us this. After everything we've done for you, I know exactly what I owe you, I said. And I'm going to pay it back in full, today. He took that as submission. He patted my back and walked away to tap his glass with a spoon. Attention, everyone, he boomed. The room went quiet. The string quartet stopped. If everyone could gather on the patio, it's time for the big reveal. Are we having a grandson or a granddaughter? The crowd cheered and surged toward the French doors leading to the massive backyard. A giant black balloon sat in the center of the lawn, waiting to be popped. I checked my watch. 2:29 p.m. Miller was 1 minute away. I followed the crowd outside. My mother was handing Lexi a giant needle to pop the balloon. My father was holding a camera. They looked like the perfect American family. Rich, happy, generous. I stood off to the side, near the gate, holding my silver box. Okay, my mother shouted, her voice shrill with excitement. On the count of 3. 1, 2, Lexi raised the needle, the crowd inhaled, and then the sound didn't come from the balloon. It came from the driveway. Whoop, whoop! The piercing chirp of a federal siren cut through the air, followed by the screech of tires on pavement. The crowd froze. The needle hovered inches from the balloon. My father lowered the camera. 3, I whispered. 6 agents and navy blue windbreakers emblazoned with IRS criminal investigation stormed through the side gate. 3 more came through the house, shattering the French doors in their haste. Federal agents, hands where we can see them. The music cut out. The tray of Wagyu sliders hit the patio pavers with a wet slap. My father, who had been seconds away from announcing the gender of his grandchild, dropped his camera. What is the meaning of this? He bellowed, trying to summon the authority he used on waitresses and subordinates. "This is a private residence. Get off my property." Agent Miller stepped forward, his badge gleaming in the afternoon sun. He didn't yell. He didn't need to. He walked right up to my father, pulled his wrists behind his back, and slapped on the cuffs. The metal click echoed louder than any balloon pop. "Richard Thorne, you are under arrest for wire fraud, bank fraud, and aggravated identity theft," Miller stated, his voice carrying across the silent yard. "Identity theft?" my mother screamed, dropping her champagne glass. "We're her parents. You can't steal from your own child." "Actually, Diane," Miller said, nodding to another agent who was already cuffing her, "you can, and you did. You're under arrest for conspiracy and money laundering." The guests were paralyzed. Phones were out. The live stream Lexi had set up was still running, broadcasting the raid to her 3,000 followers. "Lexi Thorne?" Miller asked, turning to the throne. Lexi looked around wildly, clutching her belly. I didn't do anything. I'm pregnant." "You're also the sole beneficiary of a fraudulent trust and the signatory on a shell company used to launder $52,000 of stolen funds," Miller said coldly. "Stand up, ma'am. You're coming with us." As the agents hauled my sobbing sister off her rented throne, the crowd turned to me. They looked confused, terrified. They were waiting for Emma, the good daughter, the fixer, to step in and explain that this was all a misunderstanding. My father saw me standing by the gate. His eyes went wide with desperation. "Emma," he shouted, struggling against Miller's grip. "Emma, tell them you authorized this. Tell them it's a family loan. Fix this right now." I walked forward slowly. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. I stepped into the center of the patio, right next to the unpopped black balloon. I looked at my father. I looked at my mother, whose mascara was already running down her cheeks. I looked at Lexi, who was hyperventilating in handcuffs. "I can't fix this," I said, my voice calm and projected so the entire party could hear, "because I'm the one who called them." Gasps rippled through the crowd. My mother let out a strangled wail. "You," she hissed, "your own blood?" "You stole my identity," I said, lifting the silver box. "You opened credit cards in my name. You drained my life savings while I was walking across a graduation stage you couldn't be bothered to attend. You bought this house with money that wasn't yours." I turned to the guests, scanning the faces of my aunts, uncles, and cousins who had watched me be treated like a servant for years and said nothing. "You're all wondering about the gender reveal?" I asked. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a pocket knife. I grabbed the black balloon. "Here's the reveal. The party is over. The house is evidence, and this family is bankrupt." I slashed the balloon. It didn't explode with pink or blue confetti. It just popped with a sad, empty thwack, dropping a few limp scraps of rubber onto the concrete. "Happy gender reveal," I said. I handed the silver box of evidence to Agent Miller. "Take them away." As the agents dragged my screaming parents out through the balloon archway they had paid for with my money, I looked directly into Lexi's live stream camera, which was still recording on a tripod. I smiled, a cold, hard smile. "Don't forget to like and subscribe," I whispered. Then I reached out and tipped the tripod over. It took 6 months for the courts to process the wreckage of the Thorne family. The evidence I provided was bulletproof. My father, realizing his silent partner scene was documented in 4K resolution, took a plea deal. 5 years in federal prison for wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. My mother got 3 years for conspiracy. They are currently serving time in separate facilities, unable to communicate, unable to blame each other. Lexi avoided prison because she was coerced and, well, pregnant. But the state seized everything. The Audi, the jewelry, the nursery furniture. She's living in a studio apartment funded by state welfare now, raising a son she named Cash. Ironic, considering she has none, but there was one loose end, the house, 12 Oak Drive. Since the purchase was funded by fraud, the bank seized it. It sat empty for months, a monument to their greed, until it went up for a foreclosure auction last Tuesday. I showed up. I was the only bidder, because the title was toxic and the foundation had structural issues that I may have exaggerated in the inspection report I commissioned. I picked it up for pennies on the dollar. Which brings us to today. It's a cold Tuesday morning. I'm standing on the sidewalk of 12 Oak Drive. I'm holding a cup of coffee, and I'm holding my phone, streaming live to the TikTok account that Lexi used to run. I recovered the password during my audit and took it over. It now has 2 million followers who tuned in to see the forensic accountant revenge saga finale. Hey everyone, I say to the camera, welcome back to the Thorn Estate. A lot of you have been asking what I'm going to do with the house my parents stole my life savings to buy. I turn the camera to show the McMansion. It still looks impressive from the outside. White pillars, grand entrance. My friends told me to flip it, I continue. My financial advisor told me to rent it out. But you see, this house isn't an asset. It's a tumor. It was built on lies, theft, and the idea that I existed only to be used. I take a sip of coffee, and you don't keep a tumor. You cut it out. I signal with my hand. Behind me, the roar of a diesel engine shakes the ground. A massive yellow Caterpillar D9 bulldozer rumbles into the frame. I hired the operator for the day. He didn't ask questions. He just asked if I had the permit. I did. Say goodbye, 12 Oak Drive, I whisper. The dozer blade hits the front porch first. The sound of wood splintering and glass shattering is the most beautiful music I've ever heard. The white pillars snap like toothpicks. The roof sags, then collapses inward with a cloud of dust and drywall. I watch as the master bedroom, the room my parents intended to sleep in while spending my money, is turned into rubble. I watch the nursery, the reason for the theft, crumble into a pile of twisted metal and insulation.